Okay, that sounds right. So, yeah, good afternoon to you all, and thank you for joining us in today's Tencia Employee Portal session. My name's Sean Wilkinson. We also have our National Sales and Business Partner Manager in this session, Lawrence Hughes, and we're both really excited to be able to introduce you to our latest offering, the Employee Portal, which promises to be a huge time saver for your payroll and HR teams, while at the same time empowering your own employees with their own data. Before we get underway, I wanted to thank you all for your time, as I know just how busy we all are. We want you to get the most out of today's session, so please feel free to use the chat window that's provided in the session and raise any questions that you'd like. I'll do my best to address it within the session, but if I don't get to it within the session, I'll definitely follow up and send you an email with some answers there. They'll be sent to your registered email address. So I'm really especially happy to be able to deliver something for you, our payroll clients. You know, for many years now, you've had to endure legislative update after legislative update, you know, going back from SuperStream to Single Touch Payroll, and then from JobKeeper and JobMaker programs inside the last 12 months. And unfortunately, moving forward, Single Touch Payroll too later on this year, which promises to be a headache for everybody. And, you know, so payroll is an ever-growing beast. So that's why we know sort of the Tencia Employee Portal is going to lighten your loads. And that's what I look forward to presenting to you today. So let's get stuck into it. So today's session, we stepped through just a little bit of the background of what led to the Employee Portal. So the drivers for the Employee Portal, you know, what led us to design it, what principles did we want to use in its design, and then I'll jump in and show you all its functionality. After showing you the functionality within the portal, we'll jump back out and I can give you some explanations as to how the architecture works, how it's been set up, how the portal's been configured, how you customize it, and then the data considerations, and we'll give you some information on pricing at the end of the session. So the drivers for an employee portal are many, and I don't need to tell most of you that. Of course, you've got HR teams fielding requests for entitlement balances, both current and the future projections, which can be annoying, where you have to, you know, pull out a calculator and guesstimate what that employee's entitlements may look like at as a certain date. You've got leave requests where a lot of people may be printing leave request systems, submitting them via paper and authorising them before someone in the payroll team has to enter in pay adjustments and have to calculate and enter how many hours that is by the payroll staff. There's no awareness of co-workers with other co-workers who may be on leave. There's a re-entry of payroll timesheets. If there's timesheet entry, it may be a card system or a manual system. There's out-of-date contact information for employees. I mean, that's just a big basic one, but you know, people moving houses all the time or changing their phone numbers, those sorts of things. You've got HR teams fielding requests for reprinting pay devices or details of pay values. I think that's especially more prevalent now that they're not getting payment summaries. So, you know, with those requests, if they're looking to rent a property or take a loan out, you're always getting hit up, can you send me my last 5 pay advices? Those sorts of mundane, quite easy to service queries, but that sort of take you away from your role. And then sort of the more environmental impacts fall in the increasing complexity of the federal and state government requirements. Really make sure that your payroll and HR staff need to be more focused on those important legislative requirements rather than servicing those trivial requests. So that's becoming more and more common and heavy workload for everybody. And then I think the last 12 to 18 months has all taught us that, you know, there's increasing demand for work from home arrangements. So that means those employees are at a distance, there's no face-to-face contact. So some of the systems like leave request systems, timesheet entry systems, and updating the contact information, all that sort of stuff is becoming more important to put in the hands of an employee because you're not seeing them as often as you once were. Those are the drivers for the employee portal. And then we sort of looked at the design principles and we thought what would be important to include in it. And security, of course, was going to top the list. And that sits at a number of different levels. That sits at security of your Tencia database. We want to expose some of the data you're storing inside Tencia to the employees. So you need to do that in a secure manner. But then there's also the security in the eyes of the employee itself, who doesn't want their payroll information shared with any other employee in their organisation, or if for anybody to be able to access just easily across the web. So security was a big one. Data location's another one. Of course, if we're going to offer some sort of portal or cloud-based environment, then where that data resides is important. How much of that data are we moving out of Tencia into another environment, and where was it owned in sort of what data center may be, and all those sorts of things was a consideration. Ease of use was a really big one because we're no longer focusing on those Tencia users who may have some element of computer skill set, but you're actually looking at every employee within the organisation. So the level of abilities within IT from your first employee to your last employee is going to be greatly different. So making it as easy to use for those people who aren't used to technical portals and the like. And that's where modern look and feel sort of come in as well. We wanted a modern look and feel, so the people who are using it feel comfortable and are able to navigate around, and that lends to ease of use. Familiarity, that come by way of making sure that their employee is comfortable with where they're actually viewing their information. So if they're viewing the information on some shrink-wrapped type of solution that doesn't look like you as an organisation own that data, then I think that employee would have less trust in that. So having an employee feel comfortable in any environment they're in is important. Customization, that lends to the familiarity. So being able to provide the employers who take on the employee portal a way to make it look like their own employee portal, and ways they can actually implement their own colour schemes and logos, all those sorts of elements was important to have as well. But also we understand that all your businesses are different. So the requirements of each of you in today's webinar are probably going to be different from one to the other. So having an ability to change what we present, or putting that in your hands to be able to make the changes you see fit for that last 5%, the cream on the top, was important as well. And then cost of ownership. So of course, price always comes into play, but we're also wanting to make sure that sort of the cost of ownership on everybody along the line is as minimal as possible, and that includes us. And that would be passing those on to employers. I mean, we don't want there to be any additional overheads that would mean that it's not a solution that you would be interested in or could actually could manage the cost of. So very early, we're just going to jump straight in, and we'll talk you through the employee portal workspace, and I can show you some of the features within the portal itself. So we jump into the employee portal screen now. The first thing I want to point out about this login screen for the portal is the URL address. So when we create an employee portal, all the employee portals will be created underneath an employee portals domain underneath the arrow domain. Now, where you get to have an impact is where the / is. I mean, this is a test site, so it reads test. But if you were working for ABC Proprietary Limited, then you'd be with ABC Proprietary Limited at this point. From there, you'd be able to use your own DNS entries to link that to your own domain. So while it would reside at this address, when you expose it to your own employees, if you've got your own domain, then it would look like it's residing under your own website. So I don't want anybody to be too caught up on that URL address, because it's all in the hands of your own configuration. And then we have a look, and we've got a standard login page. So what we're looking at here is just the image at the background is something I've just taken off Google Images. It is something that you can put in your own image of. So whether it be your own office, an image of your own office, whether it be your corporate logo, whatever you wanted in the background, that is in for your customization. The other element to point out is the company logo in the bottom right-hand corner of the login screen, the blue circle there. Again, just another Google Images picture. That is something I've put into this test site. And then we've got a standard login screen with a username and password, so that doesn't necessarily need too much explanation from my point of view. We've got a forgot passwords function, so I'll start there and explaining that functionality for you, because I think with employees who are always going to forget passwords, if you're managing an employee portal, you don't want to have to think that you're always speaking to that employee, giving them new passwords and those sorts of things. So if we step into the forgot for password functionality, you basically are asking the user for their username for the portal itself. And for this instance, an example, I'll use Angela. Angela's then asked for her date of birth and her email address. Now, for the sake of what I'm doing today, I'll just enter in my email address because I've linked that through in the Tencia data set. But if these 3 bits of information agree with the employee details screen inside Tencia, then we'll be able to send that employee a reset password email. So by clicking reset password, it goes off and a reset password email is sent to Angela. So if I open up my emails, you can see I've brought that email into you, so you can have a read there. We get a lost password assistance, temporary password, and Angela's sent a temporary password that she can then copy and paste into the login screen. So if I then type Angela now in the login screen, paste in the temporary password and log in, what it says is the password's expired. Okay, so what this is telling us is that we're using a temporary password, it's already expired. So we enter in the temporary password again, and then Angela can set whatever password she would like there within the password policy. So our password policies for a password minimum of 8 characters, needs to be an uppercase and a lowercase, an alphanumeric. So you can have some clarity over the passwords are going to be quite complex and hard to secure for that employee. So I submit that, we change our password for that in particular employee. That's the lost password functionality. You also have the option, rather than emailing the employee directly, if you would like to take more control over it, you can actually change that functionality to be an email direct to the employee, to email the webmaster, the portal webmaster, who would then go set a new password for that employee and email them. You've got an option, a configuration option for that. If I log out, I'm just going to log back in now as Ben Sharp, who's got a bit more data in there, and talk you through the workspace here. So when we log in here, we've got a menu that runs along the left-hand side. And of course, I can minimize and maximize that menu with most standard menus. In the top left-hand corner, we can see that logo again that I used in the login screen. That is used as well at the top of the menu that you can configure. The text next to it is also something you can specify. So your company's logo and name would be along the top. You have the ability to change the colors of this blue along the top, the gray behind the menu, and the color behind this, the key workspace in the middle here. So you can go from a light to a dark inside that. We also have options along the top here. We've got an email form. So with every portal, you would specify an email address for the person managing that portal. So if there's any queries or anything to be emailed to that portal webmaster, they would enter in there what their query is here and be able to send. So it's an easy way to contact the right person that manages the portal. You've also got the change password functionality that we just saw before. And we've got a see your profile, which I'll get to in a moment. We'll show you that a bit later on, and the log out function here as well. But while we're actually working on that, what it's important to see while we're talking about Workspace is that it is a URL. So of course, we're able to push that portal out to cellular devices. So I'll show you what the Workspace looks like for a cell phone. I'll just bring my cell phone in for a moment, and you can see what it would look like when I load it. Okay, so my phone will jump up on the screen. There we go. Okay, so this is my stand. I've got an iPhone. What I've been able to do is browse to that website inside Safari and then add a home screen shortcut. And you can see it in the bottom left-hand corner there. I've got my own company employee portal in the left-hand corner, but I've also got a demo one there as well. So by selecting that, then it opens up on my phone. It looks very similar to what you saw inside a desktop or a tablet, but it's on your phone. And then you get to use all the functionalities that a phone provides. So as I key my username and password, I just log in for Ben, use my Face ID to log in, and then I log in. And we've got our menu that's auto hidden on the left-hand side to maximize our environment, and we've got our menu items along the left-hand side. While I'm talking about the menu, if any of these functions you want to turn on or off, you're able to do that as well in your configuration. So if you're not using timesheets, you can turn them off. If you're not using leave requests, you can turn them, all those sorts of things you can turn on and off very easily. And then we've got a phone device, so we want to maximize our environment if we want to turn it sideways. So that is the environments on a cell phone. Just get that out of the way now and get back to our functionality. So once we log in, the landing page for the employee portal lands on this view, leave, pay and contact details screen. What we see loaded inside this window is what is essentially a Power BI report. So all the information for that particular employee is presented for the employee in a summary page inside this report. Why I mention it's a Power BI report, because I need to mention that it's configurable. So if there's something on this report that you don't want to see, or you want to change the colors inside this particular report, you can do so very easily, because Power BI comes with a Power BI desktop editor, and then you can go in and change the colors and design as you would see fit. So when we talk about this particular report, I'll just show you, I'm bringing the Power BI desktop. We're looking at the same report here. We can do anything we want here. So understand that the information being presented to an employee, if they didn't want to see the company calendar area of this report, I can just highlight it all and delete it, or I can remove the tab off the bottom and save it. So that's the level of customization you have to this information that's being presented to the employee. So this summary page really is to give the employee a really quick look at some piece of information they may want. So you start with when the last pay was and its value, through to this year's pay summary information, your balance summary information down the left-hand corner, and then your leave request history and the status of any existing pending leave request that's in the system for that employee. So they can start here and then drill down into more detail if they wanted to do. So in this instance, we've got general contact information. If they saw something was out of date, then they can click in this area or use the employee details tab at the bottom, and it presents to them just the information about them as an employee. They can see what their titles are, their employee type groups, tax file numbers, when they started, how many years they've been working, some contact information, their residential address, and payment methods. So if there's multiple payment methods at the bottom of the screen here, you can actually scroll up and down to it. So this is telling the employee, this is the information we have on you, and if it's out of date, then you can jump across to these other menu items and actually start updating them and get the latest information. It was surprising how many of our employees, when we rolled it out to our employees, actually updated their own contact information because they were able to see what it was we had on them from an organisational perspective. So that's the contact page. Of course, they're probably going to be more interested in pay information or entitlements, and that's where this next section comes from. So the last pay figures, you can see a date there and a value. If you wanted to drill down more into that, or you can select that area, jump over to the pays page. Now from the pays page, it essentially looks like a detailed pay advice for the employee, so they can get to the very lowest level of information they need. Now at the moment, I've selected all years. We're retaining 6 years of pay. So we can see here all the different pays in history, which is fantastic too, if that employee wanted to go back over a couple of years. I'll just simplify it for the sake of our viewing today, just to 3 years. And then we get our last 3 years on the screen. We see a summary of what I've been paid over the last 3 years in total, 83 pays, average and minimum maximums, how many hours I've worked, gross values, all those sorts of things along the top, with filters for payment type groups, job names, cost centres. You can then also just drill down. So that while it says payments, of course, we can expand the entire level that we're sitting on, and it's now starting to look more like a pay advice for the employee, where you can actually see the lower level of information and a summary of each payment type, how many pays it was they worked on that payment type in that year, total number of hours and value. If you want more information as an employee, you want to break that down again even further, in this case, when I take annual leave, I can expand that to higher level as well. And it goes down to the very pay in which that was processed. So you can see the pay dates, payroll reference, and you can see the individual values at the pay levels. So you can see that's it's quite detailed, and the employee would be able to obtain any specific information they'd like in their payroll history without having to flood down the payroll team with those sorts of queries just on their pays. we jump back. We can also, while we're on page, we can look at this year pay totals. This page is really more suited for wages rather than salary sort of earnings, where there's a variable amount of hours being worked from month to month. This employee works very similar hours. So you can see a differential from month to month for the employee. So I think if I jump to 2018-19 year, it looks a bit better. You can sort of see where the benefit would come from, where there's a variation in payment types from one month to another. You can clearly see them in the graph. Hovering in between will actually show you where they're ranked, how many hours there was worked, and what the difference was between them. You can get some information to the employee on that level. You can also sort of show them what their top 5 months were in terms of how many hours they work. So I can switch this from hours from value to hours. So I can see the top 5 months in terms of hours worked, top bottom 5 months in hours or value. And the other screen we get here is an employee salary screen. So you can see a movement in salary over time and over the years as well. So there's the information. So you've got a full pay history, and you've also got some trend analysis to present to the employee in a bit of a different way that may appeal to them. The other important area to inform employees, or the employees are always asking, is balances of leave or entitlements. Now, this is where these bottom two options come into play. It's important to point, when I show this leave balances area, people see sick leave on there. Oh, we don't want to see sick leave on ours. That's quite easily to configure. If you're not showing it on pay advices at the moment, then it's not going to show within this particular report either. So if you're hiding it on your pay advices, you're hiding it inside the employee portal. So the flag that says print on pay advice and in the entitlement code will determine whether we see it in here or not. This particular employee doesn't have long service leave or some other entitlements, but if he did, then they would clearly be on the report as well. So we start looking at our leave balances and drill down into that a bit further. And we get our total balances here in the top left-hand corner that we just saw on that front screen, but we get the days since use as well. So for those organisations that demand their employees turn over their leave, a days since use is quite beneficial. You could see how long it's been since you took some annual leave and sort of then make some decisions about making sure you move that leave on. Same with year-to-date accruals and usage, where this is a calculation of what they've accrued inside the current payroll year and how much they've used inside the current payroll year with a percentage of what's been used. There's future leave adjustments here as well. So if there's a leave request inside the system that's been pending or approved, you'll see how many hours that is in total. So while the days since use has been some time, it looks like this employee's got 16 hours approved of leave and another 24 hours pending as well. So, so then they've got some leave upcoming. And then along the bottom here, you can see some yearly movements of your entitlements. So the idea here is to see what your opening balance is. You can see the increases and the decreases. So in this year, some leave was taken in 2018-19 in August and September. And then my accruals started to increase as an employee. I increased them 93 for the year and closing out at 113. So you can see the movement in the entitlements. And you'd be able to see quite easily the months that you worked heavily in where the entitlements increased at a higher rate. One area I love on this page is the entitlement estimator. So you have an employee who says, I want to go away for a month next year, mid-next year, but am I going to have enough leave balance? So this is where you can use this estimator. So you would set the date in which it is you wanted to go on your holiday. So I could then say in 2022, or keeping in mind, I think this data set's still in 2020. But once I do that, the system calculates how many pay periods are between the current date in payroll and the date that I've specified. So in this instance, there's 90 periods, which is going to be a weekly payer in this instance. So that calculates as at 90 different pays because it's weekly. And then you've got the ability to have a look at what my annual leave balance would be in days and hours as at that particular date. You might ask, if you're working variable hours, how does that come at its calculation? We've got the ability to specify what you want the estimation based off. And if you're wanting it based off your entitlements for this year's average pay, you can do a standard pay or a last pay. So that own employee would know what would be best and what they envisage they would be working between now and the date that they've entered, whether it would be an average pay or whether it would sort of be similar to their last pay. So they can get a closer estimate if they like. So that's an entitlement estimator and designed to stop a lot of those queries coming into payroll teams. The other area was these leave requests and history here. So we've introduced leave requests into Tencia a number of months ago now, where you can enter in a leave request, have it approved by the relevant employee within the organisation, and once it's approved, it is picked up and entered in variable pays. It's automatically inserted into variable pays, or if you process an employee payroll, then it will be inserted to the process payroll. The approved leave request minuses hours from the normal payment lines, and it inserts itself as a new payment line inside the pay advice for leave, and including holiday dates as well. So if there's public holidays as well, we enter those within Tencia. They're needed because when we calculate how many hours a leave request is, we need to know the days of the week in which the employee is working, and if there's any how many hours a day they work, and if there's any public holidays in that period. So all that's now entered in Tencia, and that allows us to be able to provide and deliver a leave request system. When we have a look at our leave requests, we're looking really at the bottom here. This employee, Ben, has entered in a number of leave requests already. With the approved leave that we saw on the other screen, we could see here for the 16 hours, we've got the 2 approved leave, a bit in May and a bit in November. And there's a pending leave request there for the 25th of April. So clearly we can actually see that there's only 30 days for that to be approved. We might want to have a word to our managers to say, have you approved that request yet or not? I need to book something. You can sort of follow that up as well. Along the top here, we get a little history of leave. We can see the months in which me as an employee are taking leave and the months I'm not taking leave. And you can then obviously get a graphical representation in the history of leave taken here in this graphic. You can see red is the sick leave, yellow is the annual leave, and you'll be able to see the periods in which holidays were taken. You can see July 2019 was the largest period of leave for Ben in this instance. Very quickly you can see the periods that they're away. Jumping back, the area I haven't shown you out of these 6 summary tiles is the company calendar. And when you actually start looking into the employee portal, you start realising just how much data you collect on each of your employees that could be disseminated to the other employees as well. So the company calendar is put in here as a way to collect all that payroll information and push it out to employees to empower themselves in their own job. Now, as I open up this screen, it's very busy at the moment. I'm showing my timesheets on this employee calendar as well. You see my timesheets. You don't see other employee timesheets. And you see my pending requests for leave, but every other employee, you would only see their leave on this calendar if they were approved, so if it was actually happening. So what I'll do, you can see my timesheets here. If I hover over them, it says the time was from 11 to 5. It was double time, 11 to 5, and 11 to 5 there. So if I wanted to take those off the screen just to make it, to put some highlight onto some of these other areas, so I just remove my timesheets off the screen, and we're left with some of the other elements we're showing on the calendar. So the public holidays, I said, we're entering inside Tencia now. For leave calculations, they're going to show on the calendar as well. So here we can see it's Labor Day for Victoria in February, where there may be state-level holidays for other states. You'll be able to see them, which is great for employees to know that all the other states are shut down today. They can see that information. Basic things like the birth dates, of course. If you wanted to push out employee birthdays so other employees, can for good camaraderie between the team, you can actually see birthdays on there, and you can see when other staff may or may not be on leave. If I jump through the next month, we can also see leave there, but we also see things like anniversaries. I think this is a great thing, promotes some excellence in regards to how many years you've been employed. And if you're at the water cooler and you see somebody who might be celebrating their anniversary, that's always going to be something that can be brought up and congratulate that other employee. The summary tile for that just gives a little summary on how many birthdays and anniversaries there are in the week, how many staff are on leave today or tomorrow, and then a little summary of your own timesheets, how many you're waiting or approval, how many you've entered in the last week. So that's a little summary. So this page itself is what I like to term the informational side of the employee portal. As I say, it's configurable, and there's elements to this that you'll be able to change colours of and remove and add in your own information should you wish. And then we're going to step now into the areas of the portal where you're updating information back into Tencia. And we start there in the most basic area in the updating the contact details. So, you know, as Ben was looking at the contact information, that phone number that was entered was out of date. I can jump back into my maintain employee details and enter in my correct phone number. So I might just enter in all sevens. And that's the mobile phone number. I can enter in email addresses, all those sorts of things. I don't have to enter in every field because there's an option that allows you to update all fields or just the populated fields only. So for me, updating my details, I'm updating the populated fields only. When I select submit, what it says is the update contact details request has been successfully queued. So it's now I introduce you to the architecture within the employee portal for updates, in that that's not a direct write into Tencia. It's not like sales information or stock balance information where that needs to immediately go into Tencia. It's queued in the employee portal until such time as Tencia picks up that bit of information and makes its change back at the end of Tencia. So that employee, if it's wondering whether something is being processed or not, they can click to see your profile area. And you can see the change that I've just made in the profile page shows that for the employee name, I've changed the mobile phone number. We get a couple of other bits of information here about the last login date and time as well. So as changes are being made, they're queued. Tencia can be set up on a schedule, a minimum of an hour. So then every hour you might be able to process your employee portal requests, and then that's when they come down to Tencia. So that's an update to the contact detail screen. I can update our payment methods as another example. Here with the update action, and we can replace existing payment methods or add a new if you wanted to have multiples. When you replace an existing, then you get to enter it in. Best, I think his name is, and then we go, I just enter in all sixes for this, just so I can identify this. When we get back into Tencia, you can actually see that. We'll say CBA in this instance. And then the employee says, well, is it a percentage of my pay or is it a value? Well, it's a percentage. In this instance, it's going to be my only pay, so it's 100% of my pay I want to go into this new account. Again, I submit that, and I can continue working through the portal. Logically, if I have a look in this area, if Tencia hasn't picked it up in the time I've been talking, we now see that that's one of the methods that's still waiting there to be processed. So that's the payment methods update. Now we're talking about submitting our leave requests. Our leave request, we have a drop down here, which is our types of leave. Now, this is something that you configure back in Tencia as to what types of leave you want to expose to your employees and what payment types they are linked to inside Tencia. So you do a mapping of, say, annual leave back to a payment type for Tencia's purpose. So now annual leave, I can enter in annual leave for April. I'm going to put in a leave request here. Put in the information we want. This is a rich text field, so we can actually do some formatting. We can do all the work we need there. We can actually enter in the start date. So here, this leave request is going to be for all of April. I'll just leave it from the 1st to the 30th, and I'm going to request leave. You also get the ability to cancel leave here. So if you've previously requested leave and you need to cancel it, then there's an option here that will reverse out a leave request. Submit that. That's our leave request. It's quite easy to do. Payroll timesheets works in a very similar way. For timesheets, we've got a work type. This is a list of payment types that you can configure inside Tencia to present to your employees. So we can say I'm going to work time and a half. And I can enter in my timesheet. I can enter in information. Again, I can format that if I like. For timesheets, the only difference is you're only entering them for one particular day. So I can enter them for today. I can specify my time, my from and to time. I'll just do it till a very late night. We can see a calculated number of hours is calculated for that timesheet, and we submit that to send that through to Tencia. The employee then goes, one of the other areas in which they can service the employee's request is the emailing of pay advices. Quite easily, the employee can come in here and ask to have their pay advices emailed to them. There's a pay for this particular employee for October that I'll get emailed. I can just select all of October, and any pay advices that sit within there will be emailed to me as an employee. Okay, so once I do that, that sort of completes the areas of up. So we've got our informational area under the view, pay, leave, and contact details. And then we've got our 5 areas of update or submit for processing back inside Tencia. If we then go back inside Tencia, we're going to then able to see what impact those they have within Tencia itself. So I've just jump back inside Tencia and bring that over to the screen as I can. Now, the first thing that happens back inside Tencia is when something's processed, you get a report produced to the manager of the portal's report inbox. This would look as though it hasn't processed as yet. I'll just pull down the data. So here we can see here, as it's processing, what we get to see is we get to see the printing of the pay envelopes occurring. It uses the Tencia pay advice printing to do the emailing, and then it's also producing an employee portals report. That finishes. The employee portal report will show you all the activity that's happened in the portal. So here we can see Angela changed her password. Well, you saw me do that earlier. Ben, or Sean in this instance, set the mobile phone number to be that mobile phone number. We then see the payment method details update that I entered in, the leave request that was entered in the system, and the timesheet that was entered in the system as well, and the printing of the email pay advices as well. So all the activity that's happening in the portal is reported on, and the options within the configuration determine whether they get emailed to your pay, your portal manager, or whether they can be emailed to you on a template, or other users can have access to it. The report is just inside the payroll menu, so you've got the ability, if you're wanting other people to run that report for different reasons, you can run that report, save it as a template. Different people can have different options. You don't have to have all requests in there. You can just have leave requests or payment methods for different responsibilities. That's the report back in the system. We also can see the pay advice there. So if I open up my emails again, and just open that up here, you can see, please find attached your requested employee portal pay advice. This is using the emailing mechanisms Tencia have already got inbuilt to produce a pay advice to that employee via email, all without you having to do any work to send that to them. Again, we did other things when we're in the portal. If you go back to maintain employee details, one of the things we did for Ben was to update the name. Well, you can see it changed my name from Ben to Sean because I was working in there. But you can see the phone number here, the mobile phone number field. It's got all the 7s in it. That was the phone number that I entered online. And then you've also got the payment methods. We entered in the payment methods with all the 6s for 100%, for CBA with that account number. Okay, so you can see these updates have happened in real time. For those 2 updates, the payment methods and the contact details, we understand that there'll be many of you that might want to influence your own data standards on those updates. So there is an option, rather than make live updates to the records, you can actually just include them in the report and have the report emailed to the portal master at the time, and the report's going to then determine or provide a to-do list essentially for a payroll staff member to go in and make those changes on the employee's behalf. So you can do a live update, or you can do an offline update where it's in the hands of your payroll staff to enter in the data in the format that you require. That's the employee details. The details updates, of course, if I entered in all my addresses, they would be populated as well. And any of the other fields I get access to would be populated back here inside Tencia. So that's the employee details area. Of course, we entered in leave requests as well. I mentioned that there's a leave request approval system. So if I go back into our, this is authorised employee leave, and we can see the leave request I entered in the system there, with my employee name, annual leave for April 1st to the 4th to the 30th to the 4th for 40 hours, and the status is now sitting as approved no. So the person who is approving that leave has got an ability to use the hyperlink on the employee code to be able to go off and do an inquiry on the employee to see what their leave balances were, see if they're happy to approve that request. They can do that from the employee inquiry, Or if they want to make alterations to the leave request itself, they can click on the payment type and we come into a maintain employee leave request system. So you can see here the block text that I entered, made bolded and bigger, is brought back into Tencia. So the information from the portal comes all the way back into Tencia as a block text line. I can add my own information to the block text line should I require, or I can jump into the leave request. I can change the number of hours that were approved or the dates should I need, and the payment type that it was linked to if I wanted to as an authorizer of this leave. I don't need to change anything in this instance, so I can close that, come back. I'm happy for that employee to get the leave, select approve, save that, and now when the pay processes for April, there'll be a line in that employee's pay for their leave. So you're no longer having to manually enter in a line in variable pays to reflect that leave request in the system. You're no longer having to use a paper system or pass information from one person to another to get leave approved. It's entered by the employee and the person approves it, and the payroll staff will just see it then in the processed pay. Same process really occurs for timesheets. So the timesheet that was entered here, you can see there's approval for the timesheets as well. Someone different may be approving the timesheet. You can see the worked outside of hours here, and you can see the 11 hours that were calculated. Again, I can jump into a screen which shows me the detail that was entered, make the changes I see fit. If I need to make any alterations, I can close that, come back and approve that. So once I approve that, again, when a variable pay is entered or the pay is processed, that line will be added to that pay for that employee without you needing to do anything other than approve it. So you can see that those two functions are new transaction types within Tencia, but they set up an approval process for all your employees, which is much streamlined on any existing process that you may have, I'd suggest. So that's our timesheets and leave requests that have come back into the system. So if we jump back out, how does that all work? So I've been talking about and showing you how the functionality works. And for those who somewhat want to see the technical side and have a look at the elements of security, this is how it's been architected. So you've got Tencia, of course, it's residing on premise or in a cloud database hosted. So Tencia may be hosted somewhere. And Tencia's got reporting services that are already running. What Tencia does is it pushes out only the system parameters for the employee portal and employee login information. So for each under maintain employee details, under our employee details screen, there's just you make an employee active there. So Ben's got an active login in this instance with the username and password for logging into the portal. So by doing that, that's where you specify what employees you want to have access to the portal and which ones you wish to deny access. So that information, just the username and just the password, is pushed out by Tencia in this instance here. So the employee login details are, no payroll information is, the system parameters are, and that's what sit and house behind the portal. The portal doesn't actually house its own Tencia database or a version of the Tencia database for payroll. That information is not held. All the pay history and the entitlement balances is not held within our portal database. There's no cost of ownership there at all. So then how does the data come back down? Well, we've got our services. Our services query the portal database for change requests and the leave and payroll timesheets. And once it finds ones that are there, it pulls them back into Tencia and inserts them into the database as it needs to, using business logic rules and the methods that are required. So then you might ask, well, where does all that information come from? That you can see the payroll, 6 years of payroll history and all that. So that all comes sourced out of the Power BI report that's consumed within the portal. So the Power BI report I showed you at the start, where you can configure it, the data lives behind a Power BI PBIX report that gets published to the Power BI cloud. So Microsoft have already got the world leading in BI infrastructure and technologies with Power BI. It's only getting better by the month. And they've also got a Power BI gateway. So the Power BI gateway actually pushes data outside of your environment where the Tencia database is to the Power BI report. And then for the users, they consume that report within the portal. They can only see the data behind the graphics and the tables that are presented in that report. So that's how it's architected. And if you look back on those design principles, that's how we've been able to implement a lot of minimizing cost of ownership and the security aspects and the data location aspects of the design. They're all given a big tick in this architecture because we're not duplicating data unnecessarily in different environments that new security methods are needed. We're making use of what's already around in the environment. So like I say, there's two distinct functions, in query and the entry request. We're only pushing out the login details and parameters. Those change details and requests, they're received through the portal and scheduled, set in the Tencia parameters. The payroll information is held securely in the Power BI dataset. An important point about that Power BI dataset is the fact that it's customizable, and it's used to display whatever it is you need to show the employees inside that little window there. So you could extend out on what our default content is. How is it configured? Now, there's nothing easier in the portal than configuring it. The configuration screens and functions behind the portal are quite easy to configure and for you to tweak from your version of Tencia itself. So we really start inside the Tencia system parameters. So inside the system parameters, we've got a new employee portal option. I'll just open up those here. So we can see Tencia employee portal and we get our list of parameters here. So that's all we're set. So at the bottom area here, we're talking about what Power BI account's housing that report that we're talking about, and access is given to that report through the parameters, and that allows it to be consumed inside the portal. Some of the configuration options we have along here, I talked about what the URL name was. That's where it is there, test. We've got Tencia employee portals was the text that appears next to the logo at the top of the menu. And then we've got our portal user code, email address, the frequency in which we're pulling down those change requests from the portal, some information about when it was last processed and will next be processed. We've got some configuration options I'll come back to you in a moment for customization. But then the password policy work comes in. We're talking about this particular setup is asking that passwords to be changed monthly. We can have multi-factor authentication on login. I didn't mention that when I went through that process where rather than just the employee have their username and password, once they log in, if we've got multi-factor authentication turned on, that employee would be emailed a once-off 6-digit authentication code that they need to enter to log into the portal. So in this way, you could actually even further the levels of security for that employee, giving them another factor of authentication before they log in. The last password action, I mentioned that you could actually email the portal master or email the temporary password. You can turn the function off altogether if you don't want them to be looking at going for lost passwords. And then I talked about configuring that menu, turning items on and off. You can see these options were all set to yes. By setting them to no, that option would no longer appear on the menu. That's how easy it is to say no and it won't be there. Now, I also mentioned for the employee details and payment methods, don't make online changes. Just email the report to the person. I've got an email option there for those options that would then email that portal master with the changes to be able to make the manual change themselves. The last few options here are just around defaults for the pay advice. As we're not opening up print pay advices inside Tencia, you get to set what defaults and how that pay advice is to be printed, and those are set in those parameters. And that's really essentially the main area of configuration. So configuring the portal is quite easy in itself. And then we step into the configuration, the customization area as well. So, we've actually determined the actions taken with the request from those parameters. We're granting access to the Power BI report. We're setting policies to manage the passwords and how often the request will be processed. So how is it customized? Well, you could see the customization there. What we've got is, I'll jump back inside maintain company details. We've got these two new tabs. We've got an employee portal logo and employee portal watermark. I said I grabbed images from Google Images. That's where I did. But you would be easily able just to browse to your own images and put your own images on your portal. So you can see in that way, it's really easy to customize as well. So configuration and customization are easy. Back in the system parameters, we've got those base colors. So we can actually change the colors of the title bar and the base background that I was talking about earlier. We can do that through these options. I also mentioned when I was showing you through the portal how you link descriptions in the leave types and in the payment types back to payment types within Tencia. You can do this at an overall business level or at an employee type level, where you can actually link descriptions that display on the portal back to payment types inside Tencia. When those transactions get created back inside Tencia, that'll be picking up that payment type. So that's another area of customization. One area I like looking when we're talking about customization is at a totally different portal altogether. Now, this is our own internal portal. Just make the screen big there for everybody. And what we can see is it's a login screen. We've used our own company logo. I'll log in as myself. And what you can actually get to see is the different colors. So this is a similar color scheme to our arrow logo itself, but you can see I've got the red along the top, the brown down the left. I'm stuck with the light in the middle, but you can really see how you'd be able to put your own taste on the colors for the portal and your own use as well. So that is the customization area. And the other element really important to mention, I did show you at the start, is that Power BI desktop report. You Power BI desktop and customize that report to your own requirements, taking elements on and off the screen as you see fit. Data consideration. So this is probably a bigger thing to consider than the configuration and the customization, but there's a few things that you would need to have a look at before implementing a Tencia employee portal. So as you're exposing some of this data to your employees on the company calendar and all those elements, you'd want to look at employee names, details, and dates to make sure that you've got them all adequately populated. Your leave request setup, you need to set up an authorization flow, enter in some holiday dates, public holiday dates, and in employee types, you now have number of days they work a week, hours in a day, so you know what their standard pay would look like to be able to determine how many hours they're taking in a leave request. You've got the payment types and labels for the employee portal that I just showed you, which entitlement codes you want to make visible, your Power BI desktop, how do you want that to look like if you want to alter that report, how often do you want that report to be updated? So you may want to choose to update the information in that report daily. You can set a schedule inside the Power BI Gateway Manager. And then you've also got employee managers. Do they require a template report for the portal updates or the leave request report, where they get a daily report of the leave request they need to authorize? You get then, of course, your logos. You've got your processing schedule of data coming down, and you've got what sort of structure you want to put your portal login, usernames and passwords, all those elements. You can consider those as well. So that's all your data considerations. There's a few things there to consider, but nothing too stressful. We have a look at pricing. Pricing comes in two areas. There's an upfront price and then there's an ongoing price. The upfront price is $2,000 in total, and that includes the Power BI API registration, the Azure websites and services, and also the employee portal creation itself and set up from Arrow's perspective. But what we've also done is acknowledging that you can extend on, if you're using the portal, you can extend out and use Tencia BI specialist solutions. So Tencia BI is a suite of Power BI reports that we've got for job costing and payroll. So what we're offering is an upfront bundle there. If you wanted to go the upfront bundle, you get the Tencia BI specialist solutions for $1,000, where it's usually charged at $3,500. So it's a big saving there of $2,500 if you wanted to throw in that. Now that report is something that's more aimed at the payroll managers or CFOs, whoever's looking at wages and salaries. So this is a breakdown of wages and salaries over time. And there's 8 pages inside that Power BI report. You can see absenteeism, get a summary of entitlements. You can see wages growth year on year. You've also got demographic information on another page where we can actually see employee growth. You can see last year's salary profiles, age profiles, and you can also do health checks on the data you've got inside the system with your key checks, things like no standard pays or no super, then this report will tell you quite quickly. You can do inquiries on employees. This screen's really great for employee reviews inside the Power BI payroll specialist solution. So if you're sitting down with an employee and actually want to have all the information for an employee's wage growth and leave taken and what their outstanding entitlements are, this is the great page for that. And then you can do some more analysis on wages and salaries from year on year, see what your top allowances are, top payments, Similar with leave taken, we can see who's what leave is being taken, what months have been the most popular for leave taken, who's got the most outstanding leave days since use for each of your employees. So as a manager, you then can look at this and say, well, I need to have a word to, in this case, Hans, because Hans has been years without any leave. So that's another report. So you get that value that you get $2,500 off that for an extra $1,000 when buying the employee portal. We then look at our pricing for ongoing pricing, and to be able to talking about that cost of ownership, to be able to supply it as most cost effective as possible, it was broken into 4 tiers. So the tiers all determine how many employees you activate inside the employee portal. So they're named employees, they're not concurrent logins. So inside Tencia basically means how many employees are you allowed to flag as active in that maintain employee details screen. And then there is a cost at each of the levels of employees. But the costs are terrific, $25 a month for the lowest level and $90 per month in total for your larger organisations of 100 employees or more. I mean, that's basically $1.25 per month per employee and 90 cents for employee at the very highest level. So $1 employee a month, $12 a year for an employee to be able to have access to all that information and to be able to improve your productivity by submitting their own leave requests and doing their own work is terrific value. The pricing is just important. It does include the Power BI Pro account. You only need one though, and that's $14 to $15 a month for the one Power BI Pro account. That's not per employee, that's just one over the entire portal. So when can you have it? And we're making the portal available from tomorrow. Our last of our webinar sessions is tomorrow. So we'll be rolling it out the other side of Easter. Of course, through other webinars, we're actually already making sales, and they'll be rolled out as at April 1st. So I hope you can see the value and the benefits to the employee portal that you might have to your business. As I mentioned, if you wanted to flick any questions in through the chat window, I'll do my best to get to them outside of the session, because we've come to the end of the webinar. If you had any other additional questions that you might want to have a chat to your Tencia business partner about, they're on top of the solution themselves, and they'll be able to follow through anything that they're not able to answer themselves. So again, I just want to thank you for your time, because I know you are all very busy. So thank you for spending the last hour with me. And again, I hope you push forward with pushing out the employee portal to your clients and getting the most out of your Tencia payroll module. Again, thanks again, and yes, have a good day.